He was 19 years old, and a dictator was trying to kill him. Lucius Cornelius Sulla had remade Rome in his own image, marched an army into the city, posted the names of his enemies on public lists, and made it legal, even profitable, to murder them. The young man's name was not on those lists, not yet. But Sulla's agents had found him anyway, moving him from safe house to safe house through the hills outside Rome, a teenage patrician with a famous name and a famous problem. His paternal aunt, Julia, was the wife of Gaius Marius, the great general who had saved Rome from barbarian invasion and then torn it apart in civil war. That made Marius his uncle by marriage, and Marius's son his first cousin. Sulla had destroyed the Marian faction. Caesar was connected to it by blood. His own wife, Cornelia, was the daughter of Marius's ally Cinna, which only deepened the danger. When friends interceded on his behalf, Sulla relented. He was not a man who relented easily. According to the biographical traditions preserved by Suetonius and Plutarch, writing roughly 2 centuries after the events, Sulla told those who had pleaded for the young man's life to take him, but to understand that in this boy there were many Mariuses. Welcome to Portraits of the Past, where we explore the lives of those whose legacies continue to echo through time. The Rome that Julius Caesar was born into in 100 BCE was a republic built on a single founding terror, the memory of kings. Every institution it possessed, the elected consuls who shared power and served for 1 year only, the Senate's collective authority over war and finance, the strict ladder of offices that structured the careers of ambitious men, existed to ensure that no single individual could ever dominate the state. The cursus honorum, the course of honors, moved a Roman aristocrat from quaestor to aedile to praetor to consul in a sequence designed as much to distribute power across time as to confer it. 2 consuls at once, fixed terms, rotation. It had not designed those institutions to survive Julius Caesar. The century into which he was born had already begun to crack them. The wars of the Gracchi brothers had revealed the violence latent in Roman politics. The armies of Marius and Sulla had demonstrated that a successful general commanding a loyal army was more powerful than the Senate he nominally served. By the time the teenage Caesar was hiding in the Sabine hills from Sulla's agents, Rome had already seen what happened when a man with an army chose to march on his own city. He had grown up inside that lesson. It would take him decades to apply it. The family into which Gaius Julius Caesar was born on the 12th of July, 100 BCE, was ancient and, by the standards of his time, relatively modest in its current circumstances. The genes Julia traced its lineage to Iulus, the son of Aeneas, and through Aeneas to the goddess Venus herself, a genealogy that Caesar would deploy throughout his career with characteristic precision, never quite claiming divinity and never quite abandoning the implication. Patrician blood and a distinguished name were real political capital in Rome. Ready money was not always available. His father died when Caesar was 15 or 16, leaving him the nominal head of a household without the resources that position required. His connection to the Marian faction, sealed by his aunt's marriage and reinforced by his own refusal to divorce Cornelia when Sulla demanded it, placed him on the losing side of the civil wars before he had done anything to earn that position. It was the first recorded instance of a quality he would demonstrate throughout his life, a capacity to hold his position under pressure that looked, from the outside, very much like courage, and was indistinguishable from it in its effects. He survived Sulla's regime. He left Rome for military service in Asia Minor under the governor Marcus Minucius Thermus, and it was there during the siege of Mytilene in 79 BCE that he first attracted the notice of history on his own terms. He saved the life of a fellow soldier during the assault on the city walls, and for it he received the Corona Civica, a crown of oak leaves, Rome's highest individual military decoration, awarded only to a soldier who had saved a Roman citizen's life in battle. Its recipients were entitled to wear it at public games for the rest of their lives, and audiences were required by tradition to rise when they passed. Caesar was 20 years old. The honor was genuine, the military experience real, and neither would be the last of its kind. He returned to Rome after Sulla's death and began climbing. He studied rhetoric in Rhodes under Apollonius Sullan and produced, within a few years, an oratorical ability that Cicero, the greatest advocate of the age and not a man inclined toward generosity about rivals, would later describe in terms of frank admiration. His quaestorship took him to Spain in 69 BCE, and it is there that the biographical tradition places one of its most durable set pieces. Standing before a statue of Alexander the Great in Gades, modern Cadiz, Caesar wept. He was in his early 30s. Alexander had conquered the known world before he died at 32. Caesar, by his own reckoning, had accomplished nothing comparable. The story is almost certainly apocryphal in its precise details. Both Plutarch and Suetonius record it, but both were writing well over a century after the events they describe, and ancient biography had a well-established appetite for the revealing anecdote that illuminated character, whether or not it had occurred exactly as described. What the tradition captures, and why it has survived, is something the documented record confirms through other means. That Caesar measured himself against the largest standards available, that he regarded his own achievements as perpetually insufficient, and that this dissatisfaction was a permanent engine driving everything he did. Back in Rome, his ambitions continued to take visible and expensive form. In 65 BCE, as Aedile, he organized games of a scale that left Rome speechless and himself financially ruined. He borrowed enormous sums from his associate Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, among others, to fund spectacles of gladiatorial combat and theatrical production that the Roman public had never seen surpassed. His creditors reportedly required Crassus's personal guarantee before Caesar could leave for his next posting, so vast were the sums involved. The Roman public remembered the games. His popularity expanded in precise proportion to his debt. This was not recklessness. It was calculation of a particular and sophisticated kind. In a republic where elections determined everything, popularity was a resource as real as gold, and Caesar was spending borrowed money to purchase it. In 63 BCE, he stood for election as Pontifex Maximus, the head of Rome's state religion, an office of enormous symbolic prestige, and won, defeating candidates of far greater seniority. His enemies were alarmed. His debts were still growing. In 60 BCE, Caesar forged what the writer Varro would later call a tres viri, an arrangement among three men that modern historians have styled the First Triumvirate, though it had no legal basis or formal structure whatsoever. It was a private compact of mutual interest between three of the most powerful individuals in Rome: Caesar himself, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey the Great, who had reorganized Rome's Eastern Empire and returned to Italy expecting the ratification of his veterans' land settlements, only to find the Senate obstructing him, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, whose wealth was extraordinary and whose political influence had never quite kept pace with it. What each man needed, the others could supply. His consulship of 59 BCE was the compact's first major product. Caesar passed land reform legislation over the Senate's determined opposition, conducting proceedings in the Forum when the Senate obstructed him, physically removing a colleague who attempted to use his consular veto. He sealed the alliance in the oldest available Roman currency. His daughter Julia was given in marriage to Pompey, who was more than twice her age and who, by the testimony of the ancient sources, appears to have found in her something he had not expected to find. The marriage outlasted political calculation. Julia's death in childbirth in 54 BCE genuinely grieved him. But that was later. In 59 BCE, the consulship complete and the compact holding, Caesar faced the question that every ambitious Roman of the period eventually faced: what came after the offices? The consulship was the peak of the cursus honorum, what it entitled a man to, if he was fortunate and well-connected, was a provincial command, a proconsulship that placed him at the head of an army with all the wealth and military reputation that implied. What Caesar received was not a routine provincial posting. Through legislation engineered by his tribune Publius Vatinius, he was granted command of Cisalpine Gaul and Illyricum for 5 years, the Senate subsequently adding the province of Transalpine Gaul when its sitting governor died unexpectedly. The combined command placed him on Rome's northern frontier with legions at his disposal and the legal authority of a proconsul, immune from prosecution for the duration of his command. His enemies in the Senate had opposed the appointment and failed to prevent it. They consoled themselves with the thought that Gaul was quiet, that the command was finite, and that when it expired, Caesar would return to Rome as a private citizen, and that the considerable list of legal charges they were already preparing would be waiting for him when he did. They had badly miscalculated the nature of the man they were dismissing. Julius Caesar was 41 years old. He had a sharp political intelligence, a famous name, ruinous debts, a talent for war he had exercised so far only in limited engagements, and an absolute clarity about what he needed: not safety, not comfort, not even the consulship again, but something more fundamental. He needed the kind of achievement that could not be taken away from him. He needed to be necessary. North of the Alps, a world was waiting that Rome had never conquered. Every portrait has more behind it. If you want to dive deeper into lives like this, to discover more detail, more context, and more of what didn't make this episode, you can explore the range of portraits of the past ebooks that are available now. Link in the description and bio. The paint is dry on this chapter, but the archives are vast. Subscribe and return to portraits of the past. The next exhibit awaits.